Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack. He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing.
Elvis Presley was a legendary rock and roll icon whose music changed the world. After his death, Pastor Bob Joyce emerged, sparking questions because of his striking resemblance and remarkably similar voice. For decades, theories have fueled speculation about a possible connection between the two men. Now, after years of unanswered questions, Pastor Bob Joyce has finally agreed to take a DNA test. Could the results reveal the truth about his identity? Join us as we uncover what the test could reveal. Bob Joyce and the Elvis Presley DNA mystery. Among all the strange and unanswered mysteries left behind from that unforgettable afternoon in Memphis, one unexpected name has continued to attract attention: Bob Joyce. For decades, August 16, 1977, was believed to be the final chapter of Elvis Presley's story. It was the day the world learned that the man known as the King of Rock and Roll had died at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. The news shocked millions of people. Fans around the world mourned the loss of a music legend, and it seemed that history had finally closed the book on one of the greatest entertainers who had ever lived. Among the many theories that appeared, one connection has remained especially fascinating: the connection between Elvis Presley and a quiet Baptist pastor from Benton, Arkansas, named Bob Joyce. He was a man whose life appeared ordinary until people heard him sing. For many years, Bob Joyce served as a Southern Baptist pastor at the First Baptist Church of Benton, Arkansas. However, outside his role as a religious leader, he became known around the world for something unexpected: his voice. When Bob Joyce sings, listeners immediately notice something familiar. His voice has a deep and powerful sound that many people say strongly resembles the voice of Elvis Presley. The similarity goes beyond simply singing the same songs or copying Elvis's famous style. Recordings of Bob Joyce performing in church spread across the internet because people heard something they found difficult to explain. They heard a voice with qualities often connected to the King of Rock and Roll: a rich tone, emotional delivery, natural vibrato, and unusual control over certain notes. People familiar with vocal analysis have also pointed out similarities between Bob Joyce's singing style and Elvis Presley's known vocal characteristics, including tone, resonance, and vocal range. Someone can imitate Elvis's clothes, hairstyle, or stage movements, but copying the natural qualities of another person's voice can be much more difficult. And that is where the mystery began. The voice attracted attention, but the timeline surrounding 1977 added another layer to the story. This is where attention eventually returned to Bob Joyce. If the voice could not answer the question, many people began asking whether something more scientific could: a DNA test. Unlike a voice comparison, DNA could provide biological evidence that could either support or challenge the theory surrounding Bob Joyce and Elvis Presley. For years, people have discussed the possibility of comparing Bob Joyce's DNA with DNA connected to Elvis Presley's family. If there were a genuine biological connection, genetic testing could potentially reveal it. Would the test finally prove that the similarities were nothing more than coincidence? Or could it reveal a connection that would completely change the way people viewed the story of Elvis Presley? The possibility of a DNA test became the biggest point of interest because, after decades of speculation, people wanted something stronger than appearances, voices, or theories. They wanted evidence. A DNA test could potentially bring the entire mystery into focus. And that is why the idea of a DNA test has become so important to this mystery. What evidence led to the Bob Joyce DNA mystery? Keep watching to find out. The evidence linking Bob Joyce to Elvis. The most disturbing evidence, according to believers, comes from Joyce's unguarded moments. During a 2015 church service, someone in the congregation suddenly shouted, "Thank you! Thank you very much!" It was Elvis's famous catchphrase. Joyce's immediate reaction was to flash that familiar Elvis smile and give a slight bow before catching himself and returning to his sermon. To believers, that did not look like a conscious response. They believed it looked like a natural reaction from someone who had spent decades hearing those words from audiences. Church members have also reported that Joyce sometimes slips into what they call the other voice, a deeper and more commanding tone that they say sounds remarkably like Elvis during his concerts. When this happens, Joyce usually stops in the middle of a sentence, clears his throat, and then continues in his normal pastor's voice. But for those few seconds, believers say it is almost as if Elvis Presley is standing behind that pulpit. The bigger question is how it could be possible for one person to have another person's voice, mannerisms, scars, dental characteristics, and muscle memory patterns unless the two men were actually the same person. Because if Bob Joyce is simply a pastor from Arkansas who happens to sound like Elvis, then believers argue that we are looking at one of the most unusual coincidences in history. But if Bob Joyce were Elvis Presley, then the story would become something far more disturbing. It would mean that one of the greatest deceptions ever connected to the music industry had somehow remained hidden for decades. The similarities between Bob Joyce and Elvis were already difficult for believers to explain. But then investigators began looking even deeper. What they claimed to find appeared to take the story from a curious coincidence to what they considered some of the most compelling evidence supporting the idea of a faked death. Facial recognition technology became another major part of the discussion. Believers argued that advanced facial recognition systems could not easily be fooled by makeup, changes in weight, or the passage of time. When high-resolution photographs of Bob Joyce were reportedly compared with photographs of Elvis, some supporters described the results as extraordinary. They focused closely on the bone structure of the face. They examined the distance between Joyce's eyes and compared it with measurements associated with Elvis. They also looked at the angle of the jawline, the shape of the cheekbones, and the exact position of the ears in relation to the nose. According to believers, several of these measurements appeared similar enough to raise serious questions. They argued that the similarities could be consistent with the same person photographed many years apart. However, these claims have not been established as accepted forensic proof that Joyce and Elvis were the same person. Facial recognition can identify similarities between people, but a resemblance alone cannot prove that two photographs show the same individual. But facial comparisons were not the only thing investigators examined. Handwriting analysis opened another area of discussion. Joyce's signature from church documents was compared by enthusiasts with Elvis's handwriting samples from the 1970s. They focused on the angle of the letters, the pressure used while writing, and the way certain letters were formed. Particular attention was given to the way both men appeared to write the letter P. Believers argued that these details could reveal patterns that are difficult to reproduce deliberately. But handwriting comparisons, like facial comparisons, can also be influenced by interpretation and do not automatically establish that two people are the same. More disturbing, according to the story, was what happened when Joyce supposedly did not know he was being analyzed. A church member reportedly recorded Joyce signing autographs after a service in 2014. For believers, the significance was not simply in the signature itself. They wanted to know whether Joyce's natural handwriting, when he was not consciously thinking about how he was writing, would show the same characteristics associated with Elvis Presley. And this raised an even bigger question. Could the smallest details in a person's voice, movements, face, and handwriting really reveal something hidden beneath the surface. Is there a hidden connection between Elvis Presley and Bob Joyce? Keep watching to find out. The mysterious connection between Bob Joyce and Elvis Presley. Pastor Bob Joyce appeared in Benton, Arkansas in the early 1980s, only a few years after Elvis Presley was officially pronounced dead in Memphis. He arrived quietly, without much public attention, without a detailed personal history that people could easily check, and began building his ministry from the ground up. Whenever people asked Joyce about his life before Benton, where he had come from, or what he had been doing before discovering his religious calling, the answers often remained incomplete. He wasn't necessarily avoiding the questions, but his vague answers revealed little about his past. Gaps in his history fueled speculation, while believers closely examined his striking physical resemblance to Elvis Presley. Technology that can show how a person might look as they grow older has become increasingly advanced over the past 2 decades. Amateur investigators have spent countless hours comparing photographs of Pastor Joyce with computer-generated images and projections showing what Elvis Presley might have looked like at different stages of his life. They study almost everything they can find: the shape of the face, the structure of the bones beneath the skin, the exact distance between the eyes, the size and shape of the jaw, the proportions of the forehead. Believers argue that these are not simply similarities created by people who desperately want to see a connection. They believe the features appear similar in ways that go beyond the normal changes that happen to every human face as people grow older. Skeptics strongly disagree. They argue that when people desperately want to find a connection, they will eventually find one. Confirmation bias, they say, can make an ordinary resemblance appear extraordinary. People naturally focus on the features that match while ignoring the ones that do not. After all, millions of people around the world share similar facial characteristics without secretly being the same person. But the voice is where the debate becomes even more intense. Various analysts and enthusiasts have compared recordings of Pastor Joyce and Elvis Presley, examining the small details that make every human voice unique. They study frequency, pitch, breathing patterns, speech rhythm, pronunciation, and the particular resonance created by the shape of the throat, mouth, and nasal passages. Some comparisons have been presented by believers as evidence that the similarities are remarkable, perhaps too unusual to dismiss easily. Others remain unconvinced. They argue that talented voice imitators can reproduce many characteristics of a famous singer's voice after years of practice, especially when someone has spent a lifetime listening closely to the same performer. There is no widely accepted scientific evidence proving that Joyce and Elvis had the same voice. Much of the debate remains focused on comparisons, interpretations, and competing claims. The truth, therefore, remains in an uncomfortable gray area, where neither complete certainty nor complete dismissal feels entirely convincing. But believers say the voice is only one part of the story. They also point to Joyce's behavior. Watch Pastor Joyce closely while he is speaking or performing, and some believers claim that certain movements look strangely familiar, almost as if they belong on a much larger stage. Even the way he holds a microphone has attracted attention. Believers argue that it does not look like something learned simply from years of singing in a church. Instead, they point to the exact timing of his pauses, the way he moves between phrases, and the rhythm he uses when speaking to a crowd. To them, these are habits similar to those developed by performers who spend years standing in front of enormous audiences. But who is Bob Joyce? Really, and why has his past remained a mystery? Stay tuned to find out. Bob Joyce's mysterious background. According to Joyce's official website, His full legal name is Robert Wayne Joyce. He was born on June 19, 1952, married his wife, Willina, in 1975, was ordained as a pastor in 1981, and later earned a degree from Dallas Baptist University. On paper, these details provide a clear outline of his life. But for a man who has remained at the center of a long-running Elvis theory, the amount of publicly available information about his earlier years seems surprisingly limited. There are very few widely documented details about his childhood, his early friendships, or what his life was like before his marriage and ministry in Benton. To believers, those missing details represent another possible piece of the puzzle. Skeptics, however, see things very differently. To them, these are simply gaps in someone's personal history that have been given far more meaning than they deserve. And that distinction is important. A missing record does not automatically prove that someone is hiding his identity. A private life does not automatically mean there is a secret past. But when important details are difficult to verify, unanswered questions naturally remain. By his early 20s, Joyce appears in public records as a married musician, and his voice has been compared by many people to the voice of Elvis Presley. That perceived similarity has continued to fuel speculation about whether there could be a deeper connection between the two men. Then, conflicting information made the story even more confusing. Some biography websites listed Joyce's birth year as 1965 or 1966 instead of 1952, creating a difference of more than a decade. One detailed profile claimed that he was born on July 11, 1966, in St. John, Canada, to a father named Patrick Joseph. The same profile described him as a Canadian musician who had received formal musical training. These were not small spelling mistakes or minor differences in dates. They appeared to describe a completely different person, making the mystery even more confusing for people trying to separate fact from speculation. But what really happened to Elvis Presley that led to these questions? Stay tuned to find out. Elvis Presley's final day. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was preparing for another tour. He was scheduled to take an evening flight from Memphis to Portland, Maine, where he was expected to begin his next series of performances. But that trip would never happen. That afternoon, Elvis's fiancée, Ginger Alden, discovered him unresponsive on the bathroom floor inside his Graceland mansion. Attempts were made to revive him, but they were unsuccessful. At 3:30 p.m., Elvis was pronounced dead at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis. He was only 42 years old. The news shocked the world. President Jimmy Carter released a statement praising Elvis and saying that he had permanently changed American popular culture. Thousands of grieving fans soon gathered outside Graceland, hoping to see the legendary singer one final time. Even in death, Elvis remained at the center of intense public attention. One of his cousins, Billy Mann, secretly photographed his body and reportedly received $18,000 for the photograph. The image later appeared on the cover of the National Enquirer and became one of the publication's biggest-selling issues. Elvis's funeral was held at Graceland on August 18th. Around 80,000 people reportedly lined the route as his coffin was taken to Forest Hill Cemetery, where he was buried beside his mother. But the story did not end there. Within weeks, Elvis's song, "Way Down," reached the top of the country and UK charts, showing that his influence remained powerful even after his death. Then, in late August, an attempt was made to steal Elvis's body. Following the incident, his remains and those of his mother were exhumed and moved to Graceland's Meditation Garden, where they were reburied on October 2nd. For most of the world, this marked the final resting place of Elvis Presley. But decades later, Questions about his death would continue to fuel theories, rumors, and speculation about whether the king of rock and roll truly died that afternoon in Memphis. Was this really the end of Elvis Presley's story, or is his legacy still unfolding? Keep watching to find out. Elvis Presley's rise to fame. Elvis, born in 1935, began his music career at a young age, singing on local radio stations and performing in high school talent shows. His early musical influences included blues and gospel music, and these styles later became important parts of the unique sound that made him famous. Bob Joyce, born in 1923, reportedly started singing in his late teens, performing in local bars and clubs, before eventually joining a country band. Both artists were described as having impressive vocal talent, gaining recognition, and building loyal groups of fans who followed their careers. Elvis's major breakthrough came in 1954 when he recorded "That's All Right," a song that quickly brought him national attention. The success of the single eventually led to a recording contract with RCA Victor. Elvis then released major hits such as "Heartbreak Hotel" and "Hound Dog," which helped establish him as the king of rock and roll. Bob Joyce's breakthrough reportedly came in the early 1940s with his hit single "Moonlight Serenade," which earned him a recording contract with Victor Records. His smooth, gentle voice reportedly captured the attention of audiences and helped establish him as a leading singer of his time. Elvis's music combined several different styles, bringing together elements of rockabilly, gospel, blues, and country. His sound became known for energetic live performances, eye-catching stage clothes, and a confident style that made him stand out from other performers. As music historian and biographer Jerry Hopkins noted, Elvis's uniqueness came from his ability to bring different musical styles together and create something that felt both genuine and new. This combination of genres helped separate him from other singers of his generation and also influenced many rock and roll artists who came after him. Could these revelations bring the answers to the mystery surrounding Bob Joyce? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for staying with us as we looked into the truth about Bob Joyce. Could this be the answer the world needs? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more stories. See you there.